Mark, so thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I know obviously this is a subject very, very close to your heart. I think obviously, you've been doing or running Thomas Lee, sorry, should I say, for 5 years plus, but I suppose the game of recruitment entrepreneurship and then starting your own thing is obviously something that you've been asking about a lot and clearly you're very passionate about. And I guess to kick off, it was really to understand, okay, we know Thomas Lee Recruitment, but what does it kind of mean to you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, it's changed over the years. I always talk about on podcasts and on social media about Simon Sinek's why. And when I started, obviously, recruitment, the why was almost intrinsic because I wanted to run a business for myself and I wanted it was me, and that type of thing. And then I discovered later on that's not why you should be doing. So over the years, I've always been conscious about what it means to me to have this company, and it's now grown into my platform to do what I feel is great recruitment, what recruitment should be, also what you as a business leader should do as well into the greater business community and set that kind of. I believe in the standard, especially when you look at the company the standards that are out there as well that you should be abiding by. So I kind of believe in that and leadership and stuff like that. Also, business can be fun and business can be very informative, and that's one of the things that over the years I've grown into is being a more informative business to especially recruitment for companies and candidates. So if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem, and that's kind of where it's now grown to. Is I'm trying to be the solution to a lot of problems out there.
And is that kind of then mentally and probably physically change your tact in terms of how you present yourself to the outside world as well then?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, because I came out of an agency, I came out of an employment role where you were quite restrictive, and then when I see it a lot with people that start their own businesses, they got a bit crazy at the beginning with social media and the way they do things, and they cut back on certain things. Over the years, you find your groove, you find your place where you can be within the greater community, especially for social media, especially for clients that you work with. Yeah. The clients that you work with really appreciate that as well, where you become open and honest and basically you're not dealing with a company that's chopping and changing their staff every 5 minutes. There's a sense of stability that comes from it as well. The other part of this is being yourself. So you're not lying, you're not playing a character, you're not acting in front of people, you are being yourself. So that as well has kind of been a part of that along the way.
Yeah, and I think that funny enough leads quite nicely onto kind of the challenges that everyone kind of sees as being true to yourself, especially when you are running something for yourself. Because if we look at kind of any person who does it for themselves, one of the most consistent motivations, as I'm sure you felt yourself, is that ability to present you through a business, and therefore it becomes just an extension of you and all those types of things. And I guess, when did you start feeling innately comfortable with how you were running the business? And did it take some time to start feeling comfortable, or was it more of a day one kind of thing?
It took time. Like everything you do, there's a period of learning you have to go through and boundary pushing as well. And when you realise that you can't do certain things, you have to be quick to realise that, first of all. And then you have to have the personality to change. You can't be one-track mind about things. You've got to, right, I can't do that. Right, I've got to try something different. And that's been kind of the consistency, is that continuous change and continuous improvement kind of methodology that you learn from, your manager bleated on about in your last company. You kind of, actually, there is something in that when you run your own business. You do need to do that. You can't just follow down the track. I've got things wrong over the years. I've got things terribly wrong and suffered the consequences of it for a couple of months up to a year as well, with working with the wrong clients or putting out the wrong terms of business, and you're stuck with that terms of business with that client, and even working with the wrong company that supports you at the same time. So it's kind of one of those things that you just have to grin and bear, move on, suck it up, get on with it, basically. So that
Yeah, and I think the client one in particular is one that we see very, very frequently, and especially early doors, in terms of, because 9 times out of 10 you go from environments where, yeah, you might have the freedom and control over what you're doing, but then suddenly when you start something for yourself, there's that 100% freedom and kind of carte blanche. I can do whatever I want to do with this type of vehicle, which sometimes is very good, but sometimes also comes with its frustrations or hurdles, because just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think sometimes that especially comes down to the types of clients that you work with. And I suppose, are there kind of vivid, I know probably you got to kind of fluff up the actual name, but are there vivid kind of experience that you've had over the last couple of years where you go, no, I worked with the wrong client and I worked with them for too long in that way?
Yeah, there was, oh my God, there's been a few. And typically the reason you work with them, it's not in the times where you're desperate for business. And I say the word desperate for business. When you start out and you're trying to find your first client, you do make those decisions badly. Strange enough, you catch yourself quicker at the beginning picking up the wrong clients. It's when you're busy, when you've got really good work coming into your business, and I can take another client on. I could do a price, or I could do that role. That's pretty easy to do. And your due diligence, when you're kind of at that point of, I don't want to say arrogance, I think that's the wrong word, confident, I think is the right word to use. It's gone out the window, because you're doing well, things are clicking, everything's doing right, and then this one thing comes in front of you and you're like, how the hell did I not do my due diligence to get to that particular thing? And a typical example of that is, I've taken on a company before now, and we've agreed a certain term, which was below what I would be set of terms, but was called a fable of further business. And then once you solve that problem, you fill that role, it's just endless problematic issues after that. And the reason I agree a certain amount and only work with certain clients is because, number one, we're in business at the end of the day, they've got to pay their bills. And if they don't pay them on time, then there's a problem. If they don't manage their staff properly, there's a problem. And being the recruiter that's placed that particular person, the implication on you financially and both stress at the same time is huge. And now times that by 3 or 4 that you effed up that year, it's difficult. So those are the things kind of along the way that you got to look at, but also suppliers. You look at kind of, you need invoice factoring. You get the wrong invoice factoring company supporting you at the same time. You really are going to suffer later on with that. So you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to test and push their integrity as well as your own integrity in your own market at the same time. It's all a learning curve.
That's what I'd say. Obviously, these things just come with time, don't they? And the irony is, I'm sure you feel it day in yourself, or maybe not day in, but that even though you've been doing it for 5 years, fundamentally there are still going to be things that either you've never seen before or you've seen before. But if it's your own thing, it always feels different. I suppose that leads on to kind of, obviously you had a very experienced and long background in the agency side of things prior to Thomas Lee, and I'm sure some of the hurdles that you've experienced over the last 5 years you would have seen 101 times in that agency environment, or
it's really strange. Actually, I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine, how I was in recruitment for 10 years before I started up on my own, and 5 of those 10 years was as a business manager, and the issues and problems that presented themselves as a business manager and then as a company director of your own business, not exclusively the same. They're in different guises as well, which is even more kind of weirder. As a business manager, you do it normally through a proxy of a staff member where they're having these problems, and then obviously you could probably have problems on your own desk. But when you're a company director, you're now having these problems, and it's your business, not someone else's business. So you've got to solve these problems pretty quickly. Whereas when you work for the bigger boys, you might have pushed it to legal deal with, or you might have pushed it to HR to deal with, or you might have pushed it to your boss to deal with. No, it's all on your shoulders. The problems were the same, but with a different solution to the problem, because you're the one that's integral to that problem, to solve that problem.
It's a different environment, isn't it? And I guess
completely.
Is there a skill set, do you reckon, that people have to be able to deal with that kind of shift, or is it one of those things that you never really have that skill set until you go through it?
I think the skill set for me is solution orientated, finding because I'm an ex-engineer as well. So I did an apprenticeship many years ago, and I went to university to do a degree in engineering as well. So an engineer is solution orientated. They're always looking to solve a problem, and you could take that skill set into business to help you find a solution to things. It may take weeks, it may take hours, it may take months. You've got to find that solution. So I think having that mindset is probably the key to that. Also, accepting responsibility as well. It may not be your fault, but you've got to bloody solve the problem. So you've got to take it on straight away.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It may not be your fault, but it's certainly your responsibility when it is your own thing. I think that accountability and that discipline is a transition that no matter how many times, and I know you probably experienced yourself, no matter how many times someone might tell you about that dynamic shift and how the responsibilities and the accountability is now 100% on your shoulders, it does feel different. And I guess if you cast your mind back to literally, the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months of running the business, did you have kind of professional, personal wobbles, for want of a better phrase, or were you so committed that it just felt right?
It was a strange time, if I remember. God, it was nearly 6 years ago now, thinking about it. It was a strange time. I remember when you and I met in January, we did the whole definitely what you want to do is, and this is how we can support you and go through those meetings. But then it was all the branding and website stuff and writing the proof for the first. I think we went for a launch on the 1st of March, I think it was. So those 3 months were, no, it's not even 3 months, it's 2 months, were went quick. I'm excited. It's something new, it's different, and it's something I wanted to do, and it wasn't being employed anymore. And day one comes on March the 1st, and people are not high-fiving you in the street. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not a suddenly everyone's going to go, yay, well done, and you're going to get a telegram from the Queen or anything like that. It literally, day one's just a normal day. It's, this time now you're incorporated, you're a director of your own company, and your business plan that you decided, now you've got to action, you've got to put that into place. And that's when, is it hard work? I think is the question you're probably going to ask there. Yes, it was. It was really hard work. The first 4 to 6 weeks, the hard work was yourself, not alone, what you're trying to achieve, and into a rhythm, finding how to work, because you're not set by hours, so you haven't got a boss anymore. You're your own boss, and you've got to work that out as well. So if you're a type of character that's always out of time, and always kind of turned up late to things or quite hit schedules, that first 6 to 12 weeks, I think you're going to really find hard, very, very hard. Then if you're the type of person that can turn that around and understand that about yourself and work to your strengths, then you will get better at it. So yes, the 6 weeks was that, finding yourself and finding who you are and how to make it work. And then it clicked about the 6 weeks for me, because I think I made my first placement by the 6th week.
I was about to say, what caused it to click, really?
I know this is going to sound really strange, but when you make your first placement, even though you're not being paid for it, you look at yourself and go, oh, this works. It actually works. And then you can kind of legitimately say your own business. I think after that, now I look back at that, maybe the 5th or 6th placement you can actually say, because then you've realised, right, this is taking 60 days to get this invoice, or this is, oh, I didn't send the invoice to the right person. And again, that's the part you don't normally see when you're employed. Your accounts department tends to do that in the majority of businesses I work for. So you realise that when the money hits your account for the first time, there's this overwhelming sense of achievement within that, and you use that confidence straight away, and that's when the 6 to 12 week marker kind of ramps up your confidence level, and you start becoming you're making a lot of mistakes then because the confidence level is so high, but you start becoming very comfortable with the fact of what you're doing. The nervousness is gone. You don't have to eat for the next 6 weeks. And, do you know what I mean? You kind of, I can pay my rent.
It's a little bit more, there's a different challenge then, isn't there, about keeping these things consistent, and obviously is never more magnified than when you are running something for yourself, how important that consistency is. And I think you're right in terms of that first placement is always feels really nice. You might have 10 minutes of blimey, because of this business that I set up and I took the risk however long back I did, now this is happening. But then I think you only really step back and appreciate that, okay, this vehicle is now an entity in its own right, maybe after the fourth or fifth. And I guess that's when the confidence levels change. And I think, obviously, you mentioned hard work, and it really is. And it's not only just hard work professionally and personally for yourself, but obviously the people around you. And I guess, again, it always comes back to your why and the timing and all those types of things. But how long did you have the idea of starting something for yourself in the forefront of your back of your mind before doing something about it?
It's a great, oh God. So I think I was a year into recruitment, and I turned to a guy I was working with at the time. Or I might be 6 months into recruitment, actually. And I turned to him, his name was Brian. He was an ex-design engineer turned recruiter. And I worked at this company that seemed to have happily hired engineers to become recruiters, because that's pretty much the sector. They had some really big accounts in aerospace and defense. And I turned to him and said, how hard is this to do for yourself? And he basically, the rest of that day, told me how he had done it for himself. And for a good 4 or 5 years before, he kind of gave up and went to work for this particular company, and the things that he got wrong and where he went wrong, his weakness. And the one thing he said to me was, you're going to do this for yourself. You can't be a resource or an account manager. You've got to be someone that knows how to do business development, because 99% of what you do is business development. You've got to be able to pick up the phone, and I'm not that person. And I really struggled with that for years. And that resonated in me for, so that was 2005, 2006. That resonated in me until about 2008-9, where I think 2009 I was looking for a job. I'd just been made redundant. There was offers of account managers and stuff like that. And I remember saying to my wife, I need to do this for myself. And then she said to me, ready to do this? And I was like, actually, I think what Brian said years ago still resonates with me. I still need to learn how to do this for myself. And that's what I did after that. And I put myself in some really shitty jobs after that. It's like, not consciously though, subconsciously, because the end goal was to start my own business. Got in touch with your ex-colleague Claire in 2012, and she talked me through the thoughts of it. And I never spoke to you or anyone until about end of 2014, end of 2015, ready to start in 2016. And again, that was a situation for me where I was in a role, and I was let go, and then I went into jury service. And I remember having this self-reflection at the time, going, this is the time. You need to do this now. You can't just keep putting yourself in these positions where you start up desks and businesses for companies, then make a good chunk of money, and then just be thrown out the door because they've changed their plans. Yeah. And that tended to happen quite a lot back then as well, where then oh right, someone's broken the back of this, and let's absorb it back into the business. Now someone's dealt with that. It's going to be cheaper to do that, and that's what a lot of recruiters kind of fear the most in that sense. So it was I think that was the other part of it, was getting away from the instability of recruitment and create my own stability at the same time. So was it, if I was, what old was I? It was about 16 years ago. So I was in my mid-20s when I realized I wanted to do it. I didn't know anything about it until 42 now, so 6 years ago, so till 36 basically. I didn't really do anything about it until then. I felt comfortable within myself to do with that. I had learned a lot more in those.
I think that's the important one, isn't it? I mean, obviously, you mentioned two parts: the professional timing around these things, and having that awareness that perhaps while you might have thought about it in 2009, 2010, professionally, it didn't feel like you had the rounded skill set that you wanted to do it. But I think then it always draws back to professionally, to personally as well. And I think if you look at you know, the recruitment world as a whole at the moment, obviously, you know, a lot of people are doing it, and a lot of people always have started up on their own, some very successfully, some unfortunately not so much. And I think, do you feel as a general rule, people start their own agencies too early then?
I think so. I have this. There's a couple of things to this actually. I probably say toward it. I think you need to learn a lot more about. It's not so much about recruitment. It's about how you interact with people at the same time, and how you can put yourself across. Now, you can't always do that in certain agencies because you are restricted in what you do. But I would say 3 years in haste does not make you, or should I say haste? But what I'm saying is 3 years in a big company does not make you company director in a startup. I think you need to understand that part of it. I would say 4 or 5 years, when you get to that 5th year, and you can start thinking about how you're going to do it. You can't do it in the first 18 months. I've seen it. I've even seen people have told me they've started their recruitment agency and they had no experience in recruitment. But when you kind of look at them and see their background and reflection of who they are and what they've done at that age, and they were one of the kind of unique people in the world where pretty much they could start any business and be successful because they've got that ability within themselves to do that, and that kind of level of professionalism and motivation to do that. Whereas a lot of people that are in recruitment have this faux confidence that they can do it for themselves because they're working. And I've said this before on the podcast you and I've, where you, how can I put it? You've got to know where your business comes from. And if you're going to go from a company where its sphere of influence, you know, I worked at a very big company, probably one of the best recruitment agencies I've ever worked for. I grew in there massively. I got promoted twice in there. I managed some amazing teams, and there's some great managers in there. When I left that company, I picked up the phone to do my first BD call. The response on the other side of the phone wasn't the same when I worked at that company. And I continued that response was very difficult to then sell yourself. And I think the realization for me then was, Jesus, I got to learn how to sell myself now. And sell what I do. Whereas before, it's like, hi, it's Mark from Reed. Oh, hi, Mark, here's 10 jobs. It was like that. It was like that. So, yeah, I think you've got to realize that part. And you've got to take that into massive consideration. I would say to anyone who wants to go off and do their own thing, maybe go and work for a small company for a bit, so you can see what it looked like. That's just my opinion.
And I think, you know, while there is no carbon copy of people's experience levels before, or kind of the way that they do, you do see that quite a lot. We certainly do, in terms of these big corporates. You then start tentatively thinking about the idea. Then the major catalyst is naturally when you move to a slightly smaller agency and have the ability and the freedom to be able to do it all over again. And it does reassure you. And I guess to draw back to kind of, do people do it too early? Obviously, the answer fundamentally, I suppose, is yes in some ways. And I guess, why do you think they do that? I think is it things like the accessibility to funding and ways to do it are more out there at the moment, so people feel it's easier than it might be? Or is it the fact that they have an overinflated kind of perception of how, quote, easy it really is, or isn't?
Yeah, I think there's it's a couple of those reasons rolled into this inflated ego of believing in oneself that you can do it because you're successful at the moment. And I've seen it when I've employed people in the past. When I was a manager, employed people into my teams, where you look at a CV and they've done extremely well in one company, and then you move them into your company, and they don't perform, and they don't hit what they said they were before. So we have this, whether they were or not, it's by the point. It's this. We have this ability to convince ourselves we are capable of things. Recruiters mostly. I never see it in engineering. In engineering, they know their limits, and give them a job and say, no, I can't do that, and it's 10 grand more than what they currently are, they'll admit to you they can't do it. With recruiters, you say, we'll pay you 20 grand more to do this job. Yeah, fine, I'll do it. And we say yes very quickly to these type of things. It could be the factor of the ego and the faux confidence that we give ourselves in that sense, and it's this sense of achievement and success that we're told is money, and that's what we need to believe in, and we're doing that. So we are going to be good whether we are in this company or another company or our own.
Yeah.
On top of that, the bar, the entry level into the recruitment sector is extremely low. I'm in a group at the moment on Facebook. I really worry for some people and our industry at the same time when I read, I just started my recruitment agency, how do I get my first client? And kind of sat there going, oh, Jesus Christ, why did you start an agency if you don't know that one fundamental thing of getting your own client? If you've got a couple of months in recruitment, you kind of know how to do that. If you don't know experience in recruitment, then sadly no. So I think, and like you just said as well, being able to get in the finance for it very quickly. You could get finance for any business to start any business, and you can personally get finance for yourself if you've got the credibility to do that on credit cards, on loans, and so forth. When you push that to someone else to give you the finance for it, you've got a lot of responsibility on top of your shoulders, and I think realization for some people is when they get that money, they start their business and they realize, Jesus, I can't do this. That's when you know it's wrong. That's when you know.
And then that kind of leads on to kind of this, as cliche as that sounds, perception versus reality type of kind of debate around, especially starting any business. It doesn't necessarily have to be a recruitment business, but any business, that perception versus reality is very clear. And I think, again, as people in the recruitment world, obviously self-championing, starting something for yourself if it's the right thing to do. I think, do you feel, obviously you have responsibility, we have responsibility to market entrepreneurship in a certain way. And I think, do you think people get that right? Or again, do you think it's clearly that people don't?
I think you guys hit the nail on the head every time. I've known you for years, and your message about being an entrepreneur hasn't changed in all that time. I think you resonate with the right type of people, and I think that's why when you do bring people on board, you have quite a high success rate of them being successful, which is look at. I talk a lot, and that's why we kind of know what that looks like. What really frustrates me, where I see it on social media 99% of the time, is the word entrepreneur is being utilized in the wrong kind of way. And it's not about growing businesses and posting Instagram pictures of you in Dubai. Entrepreneur is taking on a financial responsibility to create something. And that's what it means. That's the integral part of it. Now, to create something, that part is the subjective reality versus perception of what it looks like, and that's where you see these 99% of other people selling entrepreneurship as the next big thing, where they sell that dream element of that perception rather than the actual perception. It's you look at. I can't stand these type of people. Apologies if people do. Look at the Gary Vaynerchuks or the Grant Cardones and those type of guys, and then see the people that follow them, and people in my own circle follow them, go into property or go into recruitment, and make an absolute balls up of what's going on there, then tried selling podcasts and books off the back of it. And you're kind of looking at them going, you've only been in this game 6 months. What the hell are you doing? Do your job, do what you set out to do, then sell that in 10 years' time when you've got something to talk about. It's just reverberating what other people are saying. So I think entrepreneurship is in a dangerous place at the moment, where it's oversold, and the youngsters today you listen to the youngsters today. Other than my son, he wants to be a computer game designer, by the way. But you listen to some youngsters today; they want to start a business. What? What are you going to start a business doing? Why are you going to? What are you offering the world that you want to do? They don't know. And that's when they go down that route then of. Whilst in the recruitment world, there is a few people within the recruitment world that will give you the money to start up on your own. fallout from that, if it's not done correctly, can really hurt you, your credibility, and financially as well at the same time.
Yeah,
so
you've got to be careful, haven't you? Yeah, no, you certainly do. Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that as long as you have people around you that talk to you about it and make you aware of it, it obviously is beneficial.
There's the case where you guys do that and you spend a lot of time. There's no selling to become an entrepreneur. Whether it's like Yoda says, you either do or do not. And you can't try or pretend to be an entrepreneur. You can't plan it as well. I don't think you can plan it. I think you've got to hit a moment in your life where you know this is what I want to do, and make it successful. It's going back to a conversation we had earlier on about responsibility.
Yeah.
That's when you make it successful. You take on that responsibility when it's all going wrong, when you need to solve problems and stuff like that. That's why I think people thought it was easy. When you see those issues, I know simple things like paying VAT on time, or paying your corporate tax bill, or your self-assessment, and those are the things. And then you start realizing the things you should be doing in order to do that. Surprisingly enough, people don't realize that.
And I think that there's a couple of things there that I wanted to touch on with yourself. But I guess if you cast your mind back to when you were starting out, and obviously the journey that you've been on, the perception that you had going into it, was it the same as the reality? Because obviously for someone in your position, you are incredibly clued up with these things, and I'm sure you were prior. But did things surprise you on the way?
Yeah, the reality of it all, and I remember telling it to my wife. She was on board a long time before I was on board about it. I used to tell her parents, he's going to start a business in the next 5 or 6 years. And I'd be like, really, am I? But she knew I was going to do it. The reality of it, I understood the reality of it. What I didn't understand is how long it would take for X, Y, and Z to formulate into making money or into solving issues. And in the first year, the one that shocked me the most was director's loan. I had no idea that existed. I thought I was up on these things. Yep. And then you kind of you've taken a bit too much out of the business. Now you've got to pay 20% of that. The tax man, what the heck? I've got to give that back.
Yeah.
How do I do that? I've taken too much. And with great people, that especially like Isotope, you will be told, you'll be coached, you'll be supported to realize these things, either before, because you've seen it happen 1,000 times before, or during the time that you're doing it. Hang on a second, Mark, you're taking a little bit too much out of your company. Please don't do that. This is what the result is. Oh, okay, I better put that back. Yeah. And those are the things that reality kind of breaks in, is that, yes, it's your money. Yes, you're doing things right. There is implications to what you do within that at the same time. The things I think on top of that was, and this is where you're coming from a big company into a small company and then doing it for yourself, when you don't realize the things that go on in the background that you don't have. Things like simplistic things like your email address. Where does that go? How does that get serviced? Where does that sit? And you know about these things, but until you do them or action them, you don't realize the implication of them. Find your website and how much that costs each year to keep your website going. And the funny one I always rant about every year was confirmation statement. What is it, 15 quid a year? I always rant about it every year, or even the ICO. Paying the ICO every year to be in existence.
I think that's the operational side of it, isn't it? The operational perception. I think you're very fortunate because your holistic outlook on what these things entail and the kind of the personal journey, as cliche as it sounds, you'll go on. You seem relatively clued up prior, and clearly you're very aware of it going forward. So it is the operational side. I think that's, I mean, do you think there's enough information out there in terms of the real how-tos?
I think there is and there isn't. I cheated a little bit, and I during the startup process when we were talking back in the dark ages, I was actually doing some, because I was still signing on at the time as well. I was doing some courses with Learn Direct. They knew that's what I was going to do. So I'm starting up, and then I said, look, this is what's going on. Oh, great, on this course, learn about being a company director, learn about this, learn about that. We did a 6-week course with Learn Direct. It was a day a week. I remember sitting in a classroom with people which were painters or plumbers or potters or people making jewelry, making candles. That was their running their businesses and what to do. And I did actually feel like the intruder in that situation, because I kind of already had my business ready to be set up. The reason I was there, not only to hopefully hit the boxes for the DWP that I'm doing this legitimately, but also for me to learn at the same time, because there were holes in my knowledge at the same time, where I was looking at websites, I was speaking to, at the time it was your previous company, I was learning kind of about it. And when you sat in a classroom with other people and you had a business development guru there and telling you about these things, you kind of sat there going, oh crap, I didn't even know that. Oh, I didn't even know. That's interesting. Okay, so I can't do this and I can't do that. So that was my cheat code, really, that before I started and got it cleared up. It does not prepare you for when you're doing it and learning it along the way. But the kind of that's like you said, the operational stuff, the strategic stuff, the planning, your business plan, implementing your business plan. It's not like implementing the business plan on your desk. This is different. And like I said, you're coming from businesses with spheres of influence already. 6 or 7 people probably on your desk before you over the last 10 years, made 10, 15, 20 calls a week to these companies that you're trying to speak to. You're now doing it from ground zero with no sphere of influence. And that was kind of one of the journeys that I went on to where I am today. And building that sphere of influence up from zero. And that was one of the reality checks that you go through in the first couple of months. People then say, and you're probably going to ask this question, bringing business from your own company into your new company and developing that way, that doesn't always happen. In fact, that rarely happens the way you believe it's going to go. You might pick up one. For example, a friend of mine last year set up in September, brought across a couple of clients with him, made one placement. He's now looking for a job because those clients that he brought along did not flourish into what he thought it was going to be.
No, and that's where obviously there's the restricted covenant side of all those conversations.
Exactly. And when you get your realization of restricted covenant, there's a lot of bad advice out there about restricted covenants. And if companies do it right, you can't approach these people. You are.
No, you can't. And also, one of the things because obviously it's a question that always comes up more than once in all these conversations. And I think it goes back to your sentiment that you were saying about the new business side of things and being incredibly comfortable with that. And I think it was something that you and I had spoken about before in terms of if you're sitting there as a recruiter thinking about doing it for yourself, look back over the last 12, 18 months of where that new business has come from and be honest with yourself as to how that business has been won and really what and who have won it. And then feeling, okay, on the grounds of that, do you feel confident that you can then project that forward over the next 12 months? But I think the over-reliance or the perception, to use that phrase, of focusing on, okay, the first 6-12 months, I'm going to have these clients, they've worked with me for 5 years, it'll be absolutely fine, it'll be a seamless transition. Yeah, no, that would be great. In reality, of course, it doesn't happen like that. It certainly doesn't. No, it
doesn't. And I think it was 3 years it took me to gain back one of the 10 clients I would love to get to come over. In the end, your time was better off spent with BD, finding new work and developing that strategy that you knew when you were working for someone worked. For me, it was writing really cool mailers and following them up and cold calls and stuff that identify a candidate and sell them into clients. The stuff that you know works in your sector, whatever that is, do that. You will win as many clients as you just think you take with you. That's the part of entrepreneur, doing something in order to gain money. That's the part of the doing something that we need. The reality check needs to happen at the same time, and that's the hard part. That's the hard work part. And setting the market stall up.
And it is kind of again going back to that confidence in terms of what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it, and having the confidence to stay very true to that during what is quite challenging times. And with the benefit of hindsight, everyone looks at these things in a slightly different way. But I think in terms of if you cast your mind back to those first 6, 12, 18 months, were you scared? Were you apprehensive? Were you concerned at any point during that first, opening 12, 18 months about, was it the right decision? Was it the right time? Can I do it?
you're not human if you don't think that. There's always that doubt in your mind that it's going to work. And I remember, I probably shouldn't say this out loud. I remember still having Rex call me in the first 12 months. And I remember having conversations going, I'm doing this at the moment, but keep in touch, you know what I mean? And that doubt. It all turned for me by the end of the end of the first. So the first started in March, all the way up to Christmas was bits. It wasn't stable. I was able to survive from one day to the next until then. And then after Christmas, in the January, got a client on, and it was your perfect client. It worked like clockwork. It clicked, and the bill was paid at the end of the January, and then same with the February, and then same with the March, and then suddenly it was going one after the other, and I was overwhelmed by it, and all that feeling of doubt, all that feeling of insecurity for that first year, where it was so off and on and up and down and up and down, just disappeared. And then the confidence happened. I remember going back to the conversation earlier, that's when you start making real mistakes and stuff like that. And that went on all the way up until probably mid-2019, where I think what you set out to do happens, and then you make another mistake and you pick up the wrong client, and then you're fighting it then for the next couple of months after that, and you do the wrong thing. So it doesn't go away, if I'm honest with you. But what the doubt went away, because then you are your company, you are that person, you are what you set out to be. I tell you what, that first, I'll give it a time period from March to December. Was nervous, was for me, I didn't know if this was the right thing to do. I tended a lot as well that it was the right thing to do. I didn't have sleepless nights. I had a little boy, so I was always having sleepless nights at the time. Anyway, I was also really kind of worried telling people I was running my own thing. And I just said, I know I'm in recruitment. And I never told them I was a director of my own business unless they looked at my LinkedIn. On social media, I was promoting it like that. But in personal life, I was really worried about it. Yeah. Because if it failed, then you're going to recuperate from that, in your personal life, in your circle. Yeah. That was really hard. Then I remember, I'll never forget 2017 being the year, like a Chinese New Year. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And I never looked back.
And there's different stages for everyone, isn't there? And again, that's why there's no carbon copy. You couldn't sit here and say, well, after 6 months you'll feel X, Y, Z, after 12 and go like this. But there's a general feeling, isn't there?
You look at I'm not going to mention his name. There's a really good friend of mine, recruitment director, who started up last year, and within 6 months, what I probably achieved in 2 years. Within 6 months was absolutely phenomenal. Now he's making all the mistakes, and I can see it, and now we've had conversations about it. For him, it's happened super quickly. Right? It took me 3 years to make those mistakes. It's taken him 6 months to make those mistakes. So to some people, it can happen literally overnight. To other people, it can take 10 years for some of the stuff. Some of the stuff I'm talking to some people, it's never happened to me. They've got a business for 10 years. So yeah, it's different things will happen to different people, and there is a period of growth, but financial not so much growth, and then it all meets together.
And then it does switch, doesn't it? Yeah.
And then it all switches. That time frame, is it character dependent? Yes. Is it skill and experience dependent? Definitely yes.
Is it sector dependent, do you reckon?
100% sector dependent. I do manufacturing and engineering. We're up and down more than the economy's up and down. It's a sensitive kind of market where, 2016 as well. I started up in 2016. What happened 3 months after I started up? Brexit. And that was why I had a bit of a bad year. And then, one of the things that were happening in my mind was this the right thing to do? And it was like make hay while the sun shined then, for the period of time after that. But for me and my sector, it was very nervous. And then have mates that go and do rec to rec, and they're up and down as well in their sector, mostly because there's not enough candidates in their market. They've got tons of jobs. I'm the other way around.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, I'm the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's how can I put it? Some sectors, yes. Like education is another good one. I know a little bit about that because I got some friends in that, and they're up and down. But they have moments of real clarity and then moments of kind of slowdown because it's the school holiday.
Yeah, and I think with something like education, because it's seasonal, there's a little bit more planning that can go into these things to make sure the stars align at the right time. The challenge that we find with sectors like that is obviously there's a finite period that people feel that I'm either going to do it now or wait for the next term, the next term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also then, temp and perm, I'm purely perm. I've done some temp and a bit of interim stuff as well, some contractor stuff. I've kind of stayed away from it mostly because I'm not geared towards that. But when you do contract a temp from day one, it's a slow burn. It's a build-up. Unless you win some big business, you're not going to be, smashing goals for a while with some of that. And you've got to understand that part of it. Some people might, again, you hear these unicorn recruitment businesses, which like my mate I was saying to you, did in 6 months what I did in 3 years. It does happen.
I also think because obviously it was a post that I saw a couple of days ago actually about LinkedIn and how, because we've all seen it, how it's kind of changed in terms of a social platform over the last maybe, especially 12 months, because obviously it's been accelerated given everything that's been going on, and therefore this again, it goes back to perception, reality. This front that individuals may have around how good or how not so good the business is going. There's only so many times you can scroll past those things if you're in the trenches running it, reading these things and saying, well, is that really true? And if it is, I mean, why am I not there? And if it isn't, then what do I do?
It's coming back to that kind of attitude that we talked about earlier on about being a bit arrogant and a bit kind of overconfident. We do lie a lot in recruitment about our achievements, and we do it to ourselves. But also we do it outwardly and not realise we're doing it. And I said to one friend last year, making some money during a pandemic is really personal to you and your business. You don't all need to know that. Just keep going. Just keep doing what you need to do to achieve. And people feel that they got to externalize their success. You don't need to. You don't need to externalize it. But then on the other side of that point, there are people externalizing their insuccess. Insuccess, is that the right word? Their failure, basically, by pretending they are achieving. So there's for some reason in recruitment, telling everyone you're successful attracts business to you, whereas that's not how it works, in my humble opinion. And that's where you see on social media, people getting social media incredibly wrong. About success. That's not what it's about. People don't come on social media to read how successful you are. You do that on your company page all day long. You don't need to do that on people's faces. You just tell people why you're good at what you do. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Success is obviously one of those things that everyone defines in a slightly different way. And I guess, knowing you like I do, and also just the conversation that we've had over the years about it, has the definition of success for Thomas Lee changed over the years, or has it remained quite consistent?
It's been pretty much the factor. I set out to this because, one of the things I set out to this, when I was working for people, I felt insecure and unstable in my career because there were so many ups and downs and people changing minds, and I was doing things for companies. I would get sick and tired of starting up for people and then closing it down because they ran out of money, or they're closing it down because they wanted to absorb it, or I was too expensive, or a multitude of bloody reasons, to be honest with you, for it. I thought that I wanted to create something stable for myself, and that's what was the goal from day one. It's been hard to continue the stable kind of part of the role, but I mean, my personal opinion is the goal. Well, not my personal opinion. The goal was to create a stable job. That was the number one thing, and everything else was kind of going to be the bonus part of it. And I think I've achieved that, and everything else on top of that is now become a part of that kind of movement forwards.
And I think that stability one is an interesting one, because a lot of the a lot of the objections that people have around starting something for themselves is the instability, funnily enough, or the perceived instability of it. Yeah. And I don't know. And obviously, you have to be careful because naturally you're a little bit biased with these things. One is.
No, I agree with you. Like I said earlier on, the first, from that March to that December, it was as stable as anything. That's where you then go to your financial plan and you plan kind of your next 6 to 12 months of the running joke is how much beans and toast you're going to be eating in that time. You don't do that. But it's, running a business is like running your personal finances. It's exactly the same. You've got to financially plan into the future what you can and can't afford. And in that time, in that first 9 to 12 months, you got to reflect upon how you can live. You may have to go to the gym membership, but you may not have to. It's about being ready to adjust yourself to that financially. As long as you stick to a budget and stick to that plan, then you should turn out right. The focus is then to keep your mind off that financial aspect of it, of survival, and focus on growing that business. Otherwise, if you keep looking at the financial survival aspect, you're going to really stifle your creativity to move into the future.
And it goes back to kind of the relationship you have with your business, without getting too kind of cliche about it, but it is a separate entity. And while it is an extension of yourself, the best way to view it is that, in the nicest way, you work for Thomas Lee Recruitment. Yeah, you own it, you do, but you have an obligation to it to do X, Y, Z, and in turn it gives you hopefully that stability, and therefore that hopefully gives you the creativity to not worry too much about the finances, but not be too glib about it, to appreciate that it's not a massive factor.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's when anyone ever starts a business and people come to me asking me about starting a business, not only is that a factor where you're going to get the business from, but also how you're going to pay for it and how you're going to pay your rent and your mortgage and everything over the next couple of months. And if you can cover that, then that problematic issue about how you're going to start your business, would you say that's a good chunk? It's like 80% of the problem, really. It's fizzle away.
Yeah. I think it gives you the reassurance, doesn't it? What I always say to our guys is obviously that is a massive logistical hurdle that you need to overcome, and 9 times out of 10, one of the major things that stop people doing it because they just don't have the knowledge, or they haven't been told or explained how these things can happen. But I think, again, it does go back to, and I'm sure you've had this conversation with aspiring business owners before, and I know certainly I have, in terms of just because there's a vehicle there that can help you do it doesn't mean that you should do it just because that vehicle can help you do it, and it might be risk-free and it might be X, Y, Z, but because fundamentally no one sitting there on day one, where no one's, as you were saying at the beginning, there's no ticker tape parade, it's just another Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
In the nicest way, the only person that's going to be able to drive that business forward is yourself, because the lifeline of all these things is not so much the operations side, because it's certainly obviously helped, but it's, can you do the basics? Can you build on those basics? Can you then sit back and have that confidence in what you're doing to then maybe springboard it into something else? And it's constantly asking yourself, are you getting what you want out of the business as well, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah. No. I mean, it makes sense, and I think obviously in terms of, because we're running out of time now, unfortunately. But it's one of those things that there's always 3 kind of questions that I like to ask guys at the end of these things, and I think the first one is that, okay, if you could sum up your recruitment startup journey into a couple of words, what would it really be?
Like any kind of classic venture, like E-days around the world or anything like that, it always starts off hard and difficult. You get into a rhythm and then you start to enjoy it, and it becomes a part of what you do. Then that's your job. If you have an office, you go to your office, and that's your job. Or just like your parents worked, or just like your brothers and sisters or your friends are working, that's your job. And when you do that, when you get to that point, that's your job. That, to me, the success part of starting a business.
running it. Yeah, and I guess again a slightly cliche question, and how long is a piece of string with this? But you know, knowing what you know now, if someone came to you and asked for your advice around starting an agency, what would be the things that you'd be saying to them?
I feel like I did some of the right things at the beginning, so I would do some of those right things again. So for me, it was definitely bringing in a business like Isotope to give you that background support and advice and direction, because without that, I think I would have failed, if I'm honest with you. I needed that. Also, to take away those things that you like we talked about, the operational side of it, tax and this and that. It just knocks you down and stresses you out, and you don't need that. You need to focus on growing your business and building your business. So there's that part of it. The other part of it, I would say, is I think it's really realizing how long it does really take to get the business off the ground.
Yeah,
it's mutually complete kind of with your ability and skill. It goes side by side. And you need to be able to understand mortality when it comes to that. So you've got to leave the ego alone for the moment. You can pick up later when you're doing well, but that first few months is you've got to really understand your weakness. And if you can do that, bloody hell, can you work on that? Especially when you know what that weakness is. You can really, really tune that.
And it's being humble with these things, isn't it? Yeah, and I think ego plays into it, because everyone is susceptible to it a little bit, especially when it's your own thing. You know, anything that happens, obviously anything good and bad, obviously, you know, you feel the bad things and you also want to feel the high. So naturally, you're always going to be a little bit egotistical about it at some stages, but I think it's having people around you, and family is a massively important part of that, isn't it? Because they're your anchor in terms of, okay, at the end of the day, you might be having a very good day or a really crap day, but at the end of the day, they're your constant with these things.
No, and also with family and friends is a funny one to add to that as well, where when you say you're going to start a business, the backlash you get from it is quite weird, because you thought people would support you as well, which is quite a strange place to be. So if you get that, that's not because of what you're doing, it's what they can't do, is why they're doing that. And then once you get to that point, even if you failed, you've done more than what they've done. Once you get to that point where it's working, they come on board and they start realizing it. I've got members of not just my family, but my relatives and friends and stuff like that, where they're completely different people now than they were when I first started out.
And it's generally quite satisfying, isn't it? You can't help it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to be smug about that.
Yes. So, and I guess, you know, that leads quite nicely on to a question I think I know the answer to. I mean, do you enjoy what you do?
You know what? I've not, even in this last 12 months of this pandemic as well, I have not once said to myself, I need to quit. I really love what I'm doing. It's difficult, you know, you're still banging a head against the wall with various things, which it's just a little bit more than normal, the banging against the wall. But yeah, as long as you can accept certain things and you've got to do certain things, I still enjoy it. I just wish I had more time. That's what I run out every week now, time. I run out of a lot of time each week, and I've got so many plans and so many ideas I want to implement over the next 12 months. I need another me to do it.
Well, you've got two little ones, haven't you? So there you go.
Well, I'm training them at the moment.
And
whilst they're early. But no, it is honestly, I still enjoy what I do, and I think that's where then I get really frustrated with when I see certain things about recruitment, and I do enjoy this industry and I do enjoy what I do. Would I do something else? The only thing I would do different, or the only other thing I would do would probably become a director in a movie or something. So if there's ever an opportunity, let me know.
Well, I saw your April Fool's post, which obviously next year just will be on a different day. So yes,
basically, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Obviously, I know the value that you would bring to anyone listening to this, whether they're running their own thing at the moment, thinking about it, or in the position that you and I have all been in. So thank you very much for that, Mark, and I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Take care.